What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 44 of the Whatnauts Review Show. My name is Kyle Springer, and that is Melissa Wilkinson.
It sure is me.
Yeah, it sure is you. Hopefully it's you.
Peels off skin.
I'm Spider-Man. No, so each week here on the review show, we pick a different story and talk about it. This week is the second of our Valentine's Day / romance episodes. I guess we can do romance episodes whenever we want. We don't have to line them up with Hallmark holidays.
Yeah.
But you did an episode last week on pushing daisies, which was a lot of fun. I ended up liking that a lot more than I was expecting to. And this week, one of the things that I pitched was Spider-Man Blue.
Yes.
Which is by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. They are a fantastic creative team, and this is a book kind of about Spider-Man reflecting on Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, it's a graphic novel that's Peter Parker as an adult recording in this old tape recorder. Like, this isn't a modernized story. This is set kind of around the time when Spider-Man was originally published, it seems like, even though it's a story from like the early 2000s. And he's recording in an old tape recorder like, hey, Gwen, I know you can't listen to this, but I just need to tell you my side of the story anyway. And it's about the way his romance with Gwen started and ended and the way his romance with MJ started.
Yeah. So it's an interesting book, but I want to know why you picked this book.
I've never read any Spider-Man solo. I've read him appearing in other books before, like Infinity Gauntlet, which has everybody in it pretty much.
Yeah.
I'd never read a Spider-Man solo story, and I always liked the human aspects. I always liked the Peter stuff more than the actual Spider-Man stuff. And I knew these were two great loves of his life, but I'd never been told, like, oh, well, if you love Peter and MJ, you have to read this book. If you love Peter and Gwen, you have to read this book. It didn't seem like there was one prolific romance-centered title from the series. And then you pitched me one, and I'm like, okay, that's what I've been looking for, like a very romance-centered Spider-Man story.
There you go. Yeah, there's, I think there was one, I don't remember the name of it. I think there's another one that's in the perspective of Mary Jane, and like how she falls in love with Peter Parker. I could be getting that wrong, though. I don't remember what it's called. I think it is more like it's a graphic novel thing, and I think it's more like a young teen focused book. I mean, I guess most comics are, but that one, like, very blatantly so, like, hey, here's a comic for young teen girls, you know? Yeah, Spider-Man Blue. I've been wanting to read this book for a while.
You're a big Spider-Man fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan.
Oh, sorry. I shouldn't
He's my favorite character.
You.
No, you didn't insult me at my Spider-Man thinking. I have a Spider... it's right here on the wall. I'll pick it up. But the Spider-Man No More... It's just a stupid little canvas thing you can buy at, like, Target, you know? Not that I guess buying Spider-Man canvases from Target prove that I'm a Spider-Man fan or anything like that,
That's
but,
nice to
you know,
see.
I'm here in my podcast studio, and I'm looking at Spider-Man memorabilia. But that being said, yeah, there's a couple similar books to this one. There's a series of graphic novels, I guess kind of commonly referred to as the Color series.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I've typically called them. And it's Daredevil Yellow, Hulk Gray, Spider-Man Blue, and Captain America White. And each of these books kind of focus on the characters usually early on in their career and are centered around some kind of relationship that they have. Hulk is Bruce and Betty. Daredevil is him and Karen Page. Spider-Man is him and Gwen Stacy, and Captain America is Captain America and Bucky. And just what it was like to start your careers and have this major thing kind of grow out of that, this major relationship. But I've heard this series was good. I hadn't really read any of them until a couple years ago. I've read Hulk Gray and Daredevil Yellow before, so this now marks the third one that I have read, and I still have Captain America White to read.
Then you'll have the whole rainbow.
Yes. Yeah. Not really, but sure. But yeah, I'm excited to start talking about this. This is one of a personal favorite creative team of mine. They did a number of graphic novels together. And most notably, I think, is Batman: The Long Halloween.
Okay.
Which is one of my favorite Batman stories as well. It's a fantastic story. But yeah, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale are the creative team. They did all of the color series, stuff like that. They have this very unique style that you just don't see it that stylized that often.
Okay.
And Jeff Loeb is now, I think, head of Marvel TV.
Oh.
He's the one in charge of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all the Marvel Netflix shows and stuff like that. Not that he's actually writing them, but I think he's the head honcho.
Okay.
With all of that stuff. But yeah, there you go. Let's see. Can you think of any housekeeping that we need to do?
Jeepers. Well, we have a Twitch, and we also put that Twitch conveniently directly up on our website at the whatnauts.com/live streams, right?
Yep, that is correct.
You're the URL master. So you can watch what we're doing live if you want to. And you can go to either of those pages and just watch it and chat with us. And we're always happy to see you and say hi. And we like when you reach out to us and follow us on Twitter or our Patreon. We like that. We like getting some dollars.
We like money.
It is good.
Yeah, we live stream these every Sunday at noon, and then the episodes go live every Wednesday. However, if you'd like to get them early, that is where our Patreon comes in. And if you support us at the $1 level, you can get all our episodes early.
What a bargain.
Yeah, it's a steal. And it's not just this show, but it's our Captain's Log show as well. You get all of those episodes early. So that's 8 episodes a month early for $1. It's fantastic.
Bargain bin.
We already mentioned the Pushing Daisies episode. Go check that out. That
listen
was
to that
43,
with your
right
sweetheart or your dog or your crime-solving partner or your kitchen. Your kitchen would love to listen to this together with you.
I mean, if you have a sentient kitchen, I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff you can do with your kitchen. So, that being said, I don't think I did our little social media intro stuff. We did at the start before we actually started doing the episode thing. So
it was
I'm
very
gonna do
pushy.
It once more. As I said, my name is Kyle Springer, and that is Melissa Wilkinson. Hello, party peoples.
It's still me. Don't worry.
Yeah, still you. Hopefully it's still you. That'd be strange.
I don't know. Those symbiotes work fast.
First you said you were Spider-Man. Now you're someone. I don't even know what's happening now. That being said, let's get into our spoiler territory. So if you have not read this book yet, please go check it out. It is free to read on Comixology Unlimited.
Yes.
So if you have that, you can go check it out there. And if not, I highly recommend picking it up because this is a fantastic book.
Yeah, and it takes place during largely the winter time, and it is winter now as we record this. So if you're stuck inside in the snow and you want to read a story that also has snow in it,
on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
is the thing, which I didn't even know. I was just like, oh, this is a good story about him reflecting on Gwen. And then it's like, nope, it's Valentine's Day. I was like, oh, perfect. This is great. So there you go. Here's our spoiler alert for you guys. And from here on out, we're going to be getting into this story, talking about it. We might end up spoiling some things for you. So there you go. That's your chance.
To be fair, it seems like it operates the way just Spider-Man canon goes. And you know this better than I do. Is this canonically very different than the larger Spider-Man universe in how everything goes down?
No, this was it.
Okay.
It's a different, like, version.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is what happened, but it's from, like, a different side,
okay.
If that makes sense. Like, we weren't told the story in this manner before.
Okay.
But yeah, you do get the things where Green Goblin figures out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
That I know from the movies.
Yeah, Spider-Man knows from... So, all right, fun fact. The scene in that very first Tobey Maguire movie where he is beating up the Green Goblin and does the backflip over the, like, air glider thing, and that's what hurts Green Goblin. In the comics, that's right after Green Goblin kills Gwen, or I guess right after Peter accidentally kills her.
Yeah.
But he flips out and he goes after Green Goblin, and that's when he just beats the snot out of him. But yeah, in the old comics, it's been, I want to say, like 6 to 8 years since I've read those issues. One of my goals is to read all of the Spider-Man issues ever, or at least all of the Amazing Spider-Man. But yeah, so I've read those early issues, and Green Goblin figures out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he's just like, I'm just gonna fuck with you. I'm gonna mess with you and everyone you know and love and all of that stuff. And yeah, him and Harry Osborn weren't really best friends yet. Like they were more like childhood friends. Like we know, you lived in that neighborhood, I was over here, we saw each other, and yeah, eventually in college they moved in together and stuff like that. They didn't really do a, like, this is how we met kind of thing.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know the issue numbers, but I remember it was when Peter got to college. That's when he first met Gwen Stacy.
Okay.
But it was like she was the, like, popular girl. Where, everyone was staring at her. She could get whoever she wanted. And he's just this bookworm nerd. I need to get to class. I'm going to be late. And he just walks by and pays her no mind. And she's just like, that's weird. Like, usually everyone notices me. And so she kind of took it on her, like, as a personal challenge. Like, I'm going to get him to notice me.
Aww.
And so, yeah. And then it's like, they're lab partners, and then there's this, and there's that. And they, they keep crossing paths and stuff like that. And at the same time, that's when they're building up MJ. They kind of mention it in this. Sorry, I know I'm kind of monologuing here.
No, like, this is the stuff I wanted to learn about, because I don't know. I've seen the movies, but I do not know the actual comic backstories.
Yeah, so Peter also didn't know MJ until college. And a lot of the early years of him being Spider-Man, he got bit when he was in high school.
Yeah.
So he had like 3 or 4 years of him being Spider-Man before he went to college and met Gwen Stacy and, all of that stuff. So they weren't there right away at the start. But yeah, it was this whole thing with, like, well, Aunt May is getting a little lonely. I have one of my best friends who's also around the same age. Why don't just these two old maids get a house together and start living it up, you know? And it was the thing where Aunt May was trying to set Peter up with MJ, and she kept saying, oh, she's beautiful, she's this, she's that, but we never saw her. And just over like a year or two in the comics, they just kept like, oh, she's amazing, she's so pretty, she's this, she's that. And the few times you did get to see her, she was like hidden behind something. It's like those stupid movies where like the male character is naked and everything just happens to be like right in front.
Oh yes, the Austin Powers situation.
Yeah. It's that stuff, but like with her like upper torso. Just like you just don't get to see her. Maybe you got to see her leg. You know.
Oh,
so it's this,
okay. So she's like Cerebellum from the Powerpuff Girls.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just this air of like mystery of like, who is she? But at the same time, Peter just does not care at all. He's like actively trying to get out of it. Like, oh, I said I was gonna stay late at school that day, Aunt May. Sorry, I can't meet Mary Jane, you know. And then they didn't really mention it, but he double booked himself that night when he met her. Finally, he was supposed to go study with Gwen, and then that's why Aunt May was like, "Oh, but you were supposed to meet Mary Jane tonight." And he does a thing where he opens up the door, and that's the first time you see her, and she says the words, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot." Which is really strange because MJ totally is the like sassy one. She's the firecracker. She's the one that she's very attractive, and she knows it. And she goes on to be an actress and a supermodel, and you know, all of that stuff. Whereas Gwen knows she's attractive, but is a lot more down to earth. Like, I'm not gonna be a model. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm just, let's just have fun while it lasts. And so it was really odd to see Kirsten Dunst playing her, because she's just this very bland, like, that's not MJ at all.
Yeah, that
She's
was
so much more sassy.
one thing I took out of this, because I know the Kirsten Dunst MJ, and every time I see her in a comic book, I'm always amazed at how much she looks like MJ. Like, I imagine some recent comics may kind of look at her as an example when drawing the character. But I think when we went back and read a Venom story that had MJ in it, you know, in a brief appearance, I'm like, oh, I can see how they looked at this and nominated Kirsten Dunst for the role. Like, it seems like she matches visually, but I was very surprised that this is like a very
She was just
bold, brassy, flirty MJ, and the one from the movies is a lot more just like kind of sweet girl next door, like confident but not like super outgoing. And
yeah, that's more of like what Gwen was. Not exactly, but just that more mellowed out, like, yeah, just like the girl next door type of thing.
Yeah,
but they did kind of compete, like that scene where it's like, I'm gonna read you this book because you're sick in bed. I brought soup because you're sick in bed. You will eat my soup and not listen to her read this book.
I have not actually read an Archie comic, but I presume it goes exactly like that.
It's exactly like that. And he's just like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Both of you leave. But yeah, so that's kind of, I mean, how things happened, and this is just like a much more condensed, quicker version, as he's kind of narrating the whole thing, and giving you new perspective on his thoughts and stuff like that. So there you go. What are you thinking? Because I just talked for 20 minutes.
No, that's what I wanted. I have even more comic continuity questions beyond that, but they're little things and we can get to them later. I like this comic. I think this functioned very well as a romance story. Like,
I think so too.
Yeah, I think MJ and Gwen are both like, they're both strong characters in this, and they're both being really flirty with Peter. and you can tell it comes from within themselves, and it's not just like, and then the hot girls throw themselves at the nerd. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, they both individually genuinely like Peter, and they're competing with each other, but not like in a really passive aggressive way. Like it's they don't go really into it what one of them thinks about the other, but it seems like they might kind of be having fun with it. Like they're not
So
glaring at each other.
the original was, I think, Spider-Man. I don't remember the exact date, but he came out in the '60s. Is when they were making his comics. I don't think it was till like late '60s, early '70s is when kind of Gwen Stacy's death was a thing. But they're in college at this time, so they're like 20 years old here in this story. They're like maybe a sophomore age ish. But yeah, it's that weird thing where it's kind of set back in the like late '60s, early '70s when the comics were out, but it's also kind of new because Peter mentions that the tape recorder he has is like an old thing.
Oh yeah, like he says it might have belonged to Ben. That's true.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't remember when this book actually came out.
There were some little like uh when Tim
I
Sale would
want to
like
say like
write his signature in the corner of a big splash
2006-ish.
page, he would date it and it looked like it was from like 2002, 2003. That
Okay,
sound right?
somewhere around there, I believe. But yeah, I think this does focus a lot on the romance, and I think it works really well
Yeah.
on that because you see him falling in love with this girl that, as he says, like he's not gonna get to spend the rest of his life with, but she spent the rest of hers with him, which is
Rough.
such a like.
It's so sad, and it's such a down to earth, realistic comic. Like Peter isn't like angsting, and he isn't like, oh, which one do I choose? Like it's not like that. It's
Don't read
like,
those old '60s comics.
yeah, it's like he really likes Gwen, and then MJ appears, and he's like, oh, I'm really taken by her immediately too. But he's not like so confident in himself that it's like, well, I can only have one of them. Like he's not even entirely sure if he could have either of them because like
Yeah,
will he be able to get Gwen?
he's
Is
like,
Harry
I'm the
going to
little
take MJ?
bookworm.
Yeah, so it's
So
there's not too much of a conflict over the fact that there's two of them flirting with him because he doesn't know what either thing is going to turn into. Like he's very hopeful, but he's not like, well, this can only go one of two ways.
yeah, I mean, hey, polygamy is a thing. There you go. No, but yeah, I think something else that really worked in terms of the romance for me in this book was when Mary Jane went upstairs and found him like recording
Yeah.
these tapes, and I guess she must have been sitting outside the door and heard him and was listening for a little while, and just her understanding.
Yeah.
Because like she knew her too, and I think something that's kind of a new insight is how Mary Jane, he mentions that is this more go-getter, is this more like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go do my thing, take what I want, party all the time. But then, as he says in the thing, like the death of Gwen kind of brought her back down to earth, then made her realize, hey, the party does end at some point.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to take what you have here and cherish that.
And I had no idea that there was a continuity where the two of them were ever really in the story at the same time, kind of
Yeah.
playing similar roles.
Yeah.
'Cause-
They were all kind of in the same friend group. And they went out to the diners together. They had their awkward moments where it's like, do I sit next to Peter? Do I sit next to Harry? Do
Yeah.
I sit next to Gwen? You know? And they just do the thing where it's, yeah, maybe I like her. Well, you know what? She pissed me off this one time. Maybe I like her, you know? So it does do the will they, won't they, who's he gonna pick stuff. And then, yeah, what was interesting is when when the issue of Gwen Stacy's death, a lot of comics would put the title of the issue and all that stuff at the start of the comic.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and again you'd see one that comes up at the end, but they were adamant that they didn't want the title in there until the end. Because it was the thing, you read this issue and all of this stuff they used to pack so much into these older comics, where the goblin starts to remember stuff and he's like, oh shit, it's Peter, and so he ends up kidnapping Gwen. And there's a thing where there's a bus full of children on one side and there's Gwen on one side. What do you do? And at the end, yeah, like he tries to do both of them, and the whiplash snaps Gwen's neck. And when Peter finally realizes that that's what happened, you turn the page and that's the title page, and it says the death of Gwen Stacy. And so it was like this thing, like a lot of comics kind of spoil you on stuff before it actually happens. You know, Marvel will announce the death of Wolverine is coming up. Read these next 6 issues. Well, now I don't need to read them. I know what happens. He dies. You know, yeah, and then he's come back now. But yeah, it's this thing of like they didn't want to actually spoil it, and it worked so well. Wow. And I wish comics did more of that these days. But this book, I think, does a fantastic job of just giving you an alternate perspective of just, hey, here's what he was actually thinking. Here's him reflecting on that, and here's some insight that you didn't know.
And it doesn't go to the death, which I kind of appreciated. Like it stops like that night while he's like fighting Green Goblin or whatever, and then it flashes forward to just him in the attic with his tape recorder. Like, you don't actually watch Gwen die. You don't watch the aftermath of that. He just talks about it to the tape recorder, like, Gwen, you know, after you died, like, Mary Jane really changed, and she just started to take things more seriously, and she couldn't have had a relationship with me if that didn't happen. If she didn't have that wake-up
at least
call.
It wouldn't have been a lasting one. Yeah. Which they've gotten married and they've gotten divorced and they've been apart and been together. So who knows if it's actually a really lasting one, you know? But
it seems like it's lasting in this individual story, whatever continuity thread it's in.
It's one of the tropes that people remember. So I'm sure in the long run it will always be a on again, off again thing with Mary Jane. So what else are you thinking? Did you want to talk about the art some?
I just want to close off and say that I really liked seeing the effect that Gwen's death had on somebody besides Peter.
Yeah.
That, like I said, I didn't know that her and Gwen were like peers at any point. I think both those characters are in like the third Spider-Man movie with the dancing, which I enjoy just as like a bonkers spectacle that exists out there in the world.
Gwen Stacy appears once.
Yeah.
And she's just like a random blonde girl who's like, oh my God, save me. And then that's it.
Yeah, so I didn't know that there was versions of the story where, no, they are peers. They're like, if not in the same literal class, the same metaphorical class with each other. Yeah. And so it's nice to see somebody besides Peter and like Gwen's immediate family mourning Gwen and being affected by Gwen's loss. That wasn't something I was really expecting. Like, when you told me about the story, I imagined it might be like he doesn't meet MJ till like years later or something, or like maybe she's off at a different college and comes back and this has happened to him, and it's her just kind of appreciating like, oh, you really changed who Peter is. And I kind of appreciate that in a weird way, because you've made him mature and you've made him like a greater, more sensitive man or something like that. But I was not expecting Gwen herself say, or MJ herself saying, I miss Gwen. Gwen was a good friend.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you have something that you wanted to talk about next?
I just wanted to talk briefly about how this is really a story about Peter and Gwen and MJ, but there's also a lot of time spent on the supporting characters, but not too much. I feel like it does really well balancing the supporting characters because he also has a lot of observations on May and on the Osborne family and on
What did you think of
Flash
May?
Thompson. Oh, I was surprised to go back to a
Good old
very
Aunt
old
May.
May, but I liked her. Oh, she was
Now,
sweet.
if anyone in the Spider-Man universe needs to die, it is Aunt
No,
May.
no, no. She's me. I'm that.
She has been around way too long. She has been through way too much. That woman is invincible, and it is ridiculous.
No,
Like,
I like it.
I can suspend my disbelief for a guy who got bit by a radioactive spider and now has spider powers, but an old woman that just won't die no matter what.
I do like the younger ants, as opposed to like the I don't under. Are you a great aunt? Is there like a 20-year gap between you and like your husband, and then your husband and his brother who had Peter? Like
Yeah.
she started out
You would
too
like
old.
the Ultimate Spider-Man comics then, because she's a little bit younger. She still
Mhm.
has the like white hair,
Okay.
but she's a lot more spunky, and she,
Is she like the one from those recent like Disney XD cartoons?
I only saw season 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, so I don't really remember.
Oh, it sounds like that one. I'm a
She's
big
a
fan
lot
of the
more
animes.
if Marissa Tomei had white hair and like a short pixie cut,
Yes, that's the
uh,
one I'm thinking.
yeah, and was just a lot more spunky and could still do stuff. Or if you've
Yeah.
seen Into the Spider-Verse,
Yes,
that one,
that's a
yeah,
good Aunt May.
that's a good Aunt May. Yeah, that's my hot take. Aunt May needs to die. Just move on.
I accept the older Aunt Mays, but if there's any comic continuities out there with the younger ones, I need them to live.
You need into the Aunt May verse.
Yes,
where all the
all the
Aunt Mays
Mays!
team up. What you also mentioned Flash Thompson. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on Flash Thompson? He's actually a really interesting character, I think.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with that one. I just have a general idea of who he is because he's not really in like the Maguire movies very much, or not terribly much in the Garfield
He's
movies, and they take a completely different take on him in the Holland movies. But I
Yeah,
knew
I
the
think they mention him
concept
in
of who he
the
is. Yeah.
Maguire ones, or you see him like punch him, and that's
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But I liked him that he's like he sees Peter getting all these girls and he's not like
he's
angry
like,
about it.
I don't get it,
More
dude.
like he's more like self-reflective, like, is there something
Mm.
missing from me? Like, why can't
What's
I do
missing
that?
in my life?
Yeah, yeah. I like that he's not just straight out bully angry about it, that he's like, well, I need to do something. I need to make a change. Like, he doesn't blame anybody but himself. And like, he's so inspired by Spider-Man. And he's like, I need to be a hero like Spider-Man. I'm going to go join the army, which might be like a hasty choice, but at least he's
And
taking steps.
which
He's
is what
trying to
he
do
does
something.
in the comics too. He absolutely hates Puny Parker,
Yeah.
and it would just he is the biggest fan of Spider-Man. And I think I don't know if it's in high school or in college, but he starts the Spider-Man fan club, like extra curricular. It's a school
Good.
club. They have a they have a budget and everything, and he just absolutely is in love with him, and it's hilarious. And then yeah, he does the thing where he's just like, you know what, I need to do something more with my
Yeah,
life, and so
I
he
like
joins
that.
the army. And for a good couple years, he's not in the comics, and then eventually comes back. And then in more recent times, ends up becoming paralyzed from
Oh.
the waist down, and then becomes a host for the Venom symbiote, and then
Oh.
joins the Guardians of the Galaxy as Venom. And then yeah, it's ridiculous. The guy is going places.
Wow. What a
Yeah.
big journey for Flash Thompson.
Yeah.
He gets to
But
go to
no,
space.
so I think it's what were they on? Spider-Man 700 was the one with the collaged cover, so I think it's 800 or like 799. It's somewhere around there when Dan Slott is ending his run on the current Spider-Man comics, which, by the way, we're blocked on Twitter by Dan Slott, and we have been for years. I don't know why.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything. We never even talked to him, but we're blocked by Dan Slott. Anyways, his run on Spider-Man is generally fantastic. But when he was leaving, he does the kind of celebratory issues of like, oh, hey, here's some... Here, let's reflect on everything we've done and fight a villain that is more like reflective on like the journey we've taken so far, stuff like that. And there's I don't remember if Flash dies or he comes back or something. I don't remember, but somehow I think Peter kind of reveals that he's Spider-Man. And it's this like revelatory moment for Flash, who's just like, fuck, I get it now.
Oh.
Like, if I had known this in this entire time, like I wouldn't have been the jerk to you
good.
that I have been. He finally just puts the pieces together, and he's just like, I have been a terrible person. I'm so sorry.
Aw, that's good.
And it was just like, oh, I like this. This is fantastic.
Yay.
But yeah, let's move on a little bit to the artwork. What did you think of the art?
I liked the art a lot.
Spider-Man Blue.
And Tim Sale, if I remember correctly, did the comic art that appeared within the TV show Heroes.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And his artwork for that looked a lot different.
I think maybe Jeff Loeb worked on that too.
I don't know.
I don't remember, or I might be thinking of Brian K. Vaughan.
Who knows?
Either way,
I don't remember who
both Jeff Loeb and Brian K. Vaughan worked on Lost. I think. I know Brian K. Vaughan did. I don't remember if
those names sound familiar. I've watched through Lost a couple times, so I'd probably picked him up there.
Yeah, we both love Lost.
Tim Sale did the comic art that appeared within Heroes, and it was very different. Like, it was a lot of like big, bold outlines and harsh shadows, and it was a little angular. And this looks much different than that. So I was glad to see a range from him.
That is his style. It's this very loose, kind of more expressive line work. Most of it is usually all the same line weight, but he does use very thick shadows. Like shadows are just these big black swatches, and it's typical for a lot of comics. But he has his own way of doing it, where it's more expressive than just like, okay, we need to fill in this part with black. It is very much, you can see like, oh, he's using either some kind of like pen and ink, or he's using and it's not your typical like Greek god looking characters and stuff like that. It is this, okay, that guy has a crooked nose, and this guy has these like bulging eyes, and this guy has the, these awkward lanky fingers and stuff like that. So yeah, it's something you don't see as often. I guess nowadays you're starting to see it every now and then, just to have this super stylized artwork. But a lot of times both Marvel and DC stick to a certain like house style. Like, hey, try your best to make it look like Jim Lee, and his artwork and stuff like that. So to get these kind of one-off graphic novels where it's stylized was kind of rare.
Yeah, it looks a lot
So
like comics from the time would look, I imagine, having not read the old ones.
the
But you kind of just through cultural osmosis get what comics in the 60s kind of looked like.
have you and I read anything of like Ed Brubaker crime type? I feel like we have. I know I
You
did Velvet,
That
and I
was
know,
just before I joined you. I think
yeah.
you might have pitched me a couple Brew crime stories, but I didn't actually pick any of them.
So a lot of the artists he works with, usually Sean Phillips, they
Hmm.
do this very classical kind of like 50s advertise, like what you would see in like 50s
Okay, yeah.
advertising art style, like Leave It to Beaver style looking characters. That's what a lot of those older 60s comics look like.
Hmm.
um there is a little bit of variation because Peter Parker is very skinny when he first,
Yeah.
when he's puny Parker, um,
Hmm.
and so I think this does a good job of taking those references and that like that style and fashion sense, and then making it his own, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I've also read Hulk Gray and Daredevil Yellow, and I really felt like the artwork worked amazingly well for Daredevil, because
Oh.
both Daredevil and Spider-Man are more street level
Yes.
heroes, but Daredevil also kind of like he works in the shadows more. He has this more noir feeling to his character, and so it works really well for that. Spider-Man doesn't necessarily have that noir
Hmm.
stylings, but he is still a street level character, so it works to be like, oh, hey, here's Harry Osborn with his like bug eyes and like weird looking nose, and
He's
like he
yeah,
just,
he's angular.
yeah, like he looks more like a real person,
Hmm.
if that makes sense,
Hmm.
despite it being stylized.
Yeah. One thing I noticed about the artwork is that it has a lot of big splash pages, but they're not pages for like action, maybe not necessarily. It's a lot of big portraits of somebody.
Hmm.
And it made me think of Peter Parker as a photographer.
Yeah,
Like there's a lot of big panels in this book that do look just like a photograph that Peter would take of like,
yeah,
here's a shot of Mary Jane. Here's like it's not necessarily a Spider-Man action shot. It's like from a comic book perspective, it's like the shot Peter would set up his camera to take of him as Spider-Man. And I thought that matched really well with, you know, Peter telling his own story, like not just being the narrator, but actually recording into a tape recorder. I remember when I was young and these were all the things going on in my life. When photography was a pretty big part of that life, I guess. He doesn't stop and talk about it very much. It's more of a
hmm,
plot device than like a legitimate character trait. But
right.
oh, they felt like photographs to me, and I thought that was kind of neat.
Interesting. So I didn't make that connection, though that does make sense. There is a lot of also jazz influence in
Oh,
this book.
yeah.
The first issue, I think all the issues are named after a famous jazz song. The first one,
Hmm.
I think, is the most obvious one, being My Funny Valentine.
Hmm.
But I and at the end of the book, when he describes how he feel, like thinking back on all of this, how does this make me feel?
Hmm.
He says it makes me feel blue, not as in the
Yeah.
color, but as in jazz, like
Yeah.
just the nostalgia and
Hmm.
stuff that that comes with that. It's a very sad, quiet moment, um,
Yeah.
for him, and I think despite that and the like titles of the single issues, I felt like the rhythm of the comic moves fairly quickly and has a kind of
Yeah.
a jazzy feel, but hitting back to these bigger or
Hmm.
not splash pages per se, but just these bigger
Yeah.
panels that are
Yes.
portraits of these
Hmm.
people. A lot of jazz albums did stuff like that, where it was a portrait of the person,
Oh.
right? Like it's a portrait of Miles Davis, or a portrait of Bill Everett and his trio, you know, and that was kind of the artwork of these things. It's them with their instruments, or it's that, and here it's Gwen Stacy looking back at him as he leaves the hospital, right? And it's this almost like portrait glamour shot of her like looking back and smirking, there's shots of MJ in the same way. There's shots of Peter in the same way, and it's these character moments and their stories, and I think that's kind of what a jazz album is. It's their thoughts and reflections, and it's a story that they have to tell. So it's a neat little
This is a fairly simple story, but there is a lot going on in it.
Yeah, there is quite a bit. That is for sure. Was there anything else you wanted to mention?
I had two quick, just Marvel continuity questions, because they would mention things, and I needed to ask a real comic book person about them. So they see, they're all having a party, and Flash sees Spider-Man like swoop past the window, but everybody else doesn't see him. And I think like Gwen or MJ leans out and looks, and it's like, oh yeah, I see the Invisible Woman in her invisible plane with her invisible dog. And I know, that's Sue Storm, who was in the same place at about the same time. Maybe she does have an invisible plane. I've never heard of the Fantastic Four having an invisible dog. Is that real? Or was that just like a joke? Okay, because I'm like, there's no way they have an invisible dog, and I've never heard about it.
So yes, Sue Storm does exist in this universe. I don't know if they have a invisible plane. I know they have the Fantastic Car, and Spider-Man at one point had the Spider Buggy.
Oh yes.
But yeah, I mean, it can also sometimes comic books will do the thing where like the comic books of the Marvel universe are like weird references to the DC universe, because Wonder Woman has an invisible plane,
but she doesn't have an invisible dog. Like, no, that seems like something the Fantastic Four would have, because they're all weird and sciency.
Ultimately, I think they're just fucking with them. They're just like, Flash, we sure saw him, just like we saw the Invisible Woman. Idiot, like what a loser.
Okay, there's no real dog. Okay, I was tricked, just like Flash. And towards the beginning of the comic, when Peter is in J. Jonah Jameson's office, like they're talking about some other reporter that they might send for a photography assignment. And instead they send Peter because that other guy is covering the Tony Stark trial. And I imagine Tony has been on trial a couple times, but is there like a specific thing they're talking about?
I actually don't know what exactly that's in reference to.
Okay.
Considering this is happening early on in the Marvel universe, it might be something more along the lines of Tony Stark actually being revealed as Iron Man. I don't know if that's the case or not, so take that with a grain of salt. Or it might just be something in Tony's personal life. He is a weapons dealer.
He's just in and out of court all the time, probably. I just didn't know.
So it might be something with the government contract, not necessarily having anything to do with Iron Man per se. Because I know for a long time, the like alter ego thing was that Iron Man was Tony Stark's personal bodyguard. Like that was the explanation. Like, why does he always show up around Stark Towers? It's like, oh, he's my personal security. That'll fool him.
I didn't know if like I'm reading these books with like two eyes, and you're reading them with like a magic third eye that opens up in your forehead because you know the comic stuff, and you're accessing it on levels I can't even comprehend.
So I will mention this. I've actually read more like early DC comics than I have Marvel stuff. The only like early Marvel comics I've read has been Spider-Man. and I think I got like, I want to say mid to late 70s is when I stopped. It was right around the time that Black Cat should have been showing up. But yeah, in terms of like older Marvel comics, I actually don't know much of just like,
Okay.
so I know the Fantastic Four have been around. I know this is their kind of story. I know Spider-Man has worked with them here and there. You know, he went to go be one of them at one point. He got kicked out, and he was the Fantastic Bagman. And he had a paper bag on top of his head as his mask, and had a kick me sign on the back. One more thing, though, I will say about continuity that this book does not mention. They don't mention Gwen's father and everything that happened to him. Captain Stacy, who is also dead, and who also he was a police officer, died kind of in the line of duty. Spider-Man was involved. There is a collection of the issues out that you can get. It's the death of the Stacys, and it covers all of the stuff from how Captain Stacy died, how Spider-Man was involved with that, and then moving on to the stuff that we kind of saw in this book, where Green Goblin kind of figures out that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and he starts fucking with him and eventually kidnaps Gwen Stacy, and that's how everything happens there. So that seemed a little odd to me that wasn't even mentioned within this, because she doesn't know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, you know? So it's just this weird thing of like, do I tell her that I was kind of involved in her father's death? I mean, it's almost like in pushing daisies from last week, where the main character is involved in that character's father's death, you know? It's just like, do I tell her? Do I not? What do I do? So I thought that was a little bit strange, but this is only 6 issues long. It is more focused on the romance, so I guess it makes sense. But one more thing, I would have, if you had another issue, that would have been nice to reflect on.
I was kind of wondering about that, because this is weird. I have seen the second Amazing Spider-Man movie a couple times. I've never seen the first one.
I say the first one is better. Second one just gets very bloated, but they're both weird.
There's something about the second one I like for some weird reason. And I've been considering, even though I pretty much know how it goes, going back and watch the first one just so that I have that complete set done. But so I knew that was vaguely a thing going on based on the trailers and what they talk about in the second movie. But I didn't know, like, maybe that was the thing they invented for the movie. Was it pre-existing? Who can say?
That's a thing. Captain Stacy did.
Bye.
Yeah. No more Captain Stacy. But yeah, I wanted to mention that because you mentioned earlier a comment about Gwen's family, like mourning her. And it's like, well, she didn't really have any other family. So the only people in her funeral was like Harry and MJ and Peter and Aunt May and, you know, stuff like that. But yeah. So now that we're kind of done talking about this book, what can you think of to recommend if people liked this book?
I just finished this like 2 hours ago. I haven't had time to come up with a if you liked X, you may also like Y.
This is kind of a hard one for me. I think to be like, oh, you should absolutely read this one book. I think in general an easy sell is just go read the other books in the Color series. Hulk Gray is surprisingly good. That was the first Hulk book I ever read, and it focuses on the early years of Hulk being Hulk and his relationship to Betty and that romance there, but it also kind of brings in this. So if Spider-Man Blue kind of was influenced by jazz, Hulk Gray was more influenced by like old sci-fi horror monster movies.
Nice.
Because I mean, that's what Hulk is. He's this giant monster, right?
That's him.
So there's the kind of Frankenstein aspect, and Wolfman, Dracula. Just here's these monsters, here are these horrors. What do we do with them? Attack! Pitchforks! And then there's the like not really damsel in distress, but there's always that like weird like sub theme of like, hey, there's this erotic undertones of this woman who falls in love with this monster creature thing, and just like he's just misunderstood. There was also Daredevil Yellow, which has more of a kind of crime noir feeling to it, which is really neat. But it does focus on the relationship between Matt and Karen. And Foggy is in that as well, so it's kind of a love triangle going on. So it's kind of the relationship between the three, but you can tell it's probably kind of leaning more towards Matt and Karen.
I liked her and Foggy together, at least in the TV show.
And I haven't read Captain America White, but that focuses more on the relation, or like the partnership between Captain America and Bucky, who in the old comics, Bucky was only a kid.
Yeah,
like,
he was like
the
a
like
Robin
same age
almost.
best friend. Yeah, it's like Batman and Robin. Like he was a kid, and I've not read that one yet. That they actually only had done the three of them, and then had plans to do Captain America White, and didn't do that until a lot more recently. I think like 2016, 2017-ish is when that book finally came out. But yeah, I have yet to read that one. I would recommend that as well. And of course, Batman: The Long Halloween is a fantastic book. And then I think the sequel to that one is Batman: Dark Victory, which is also done by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. I would recommend those two.
Okay.
As well. Not romance stuff.
No,
really.
I've been trying to think of a good superhero romance story I could suggest. Oh, go listen to the Bright Sessions. They're not superheroes, but they do have superpowers.
Yeah. I can see that. That's also a very reflective. You get a lot of stuff on tape recorders.
Yes, yeah. Go listen to some Bright Sessions.
It's
good.
an audio drama podcast, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there anything else I can think of? Yeah, I don't know if there's like a good.
This isn't like a suggestion. It's more of a plug. But a friend of mine last summer did a podcast called Trifecta, where we would compare 3 different versions of something. It's Tri with a Y. And there's an episode I recorded where we're talking about the 3 cinematic Spider-Men. So you can go look that up and find out why I like The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man. Yeah. Wait. So yeah, that's right. You've only seen Amazing Spider-Man 2. I was thinking you meant like Spider-Man 2. Oh, the Tobey Maguire
that one I like the
like,
best of all.
That's the best one. Yeah, out of those 3.
That's still like one of my favorite superhero movies of any kind.
It's still very dated, but yeah.
It is a little dated, but like
Octopus is fantastic though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that being said, go check that stuff out if you liked this. I guess we haven't even really said Happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Yes,
this episode is coming out this coming Wednesday, which is, I guess, the closest episode.
The day before, yes.
The day before. Yeah, that's right. I don't even know when Valentine's Day is. I'm like, it's coming out on Wednesday. I don't know when that is in relation to.
Valentine's Day is Thursday. Enjoy it with your sweetheart or your friends or your own
buy yourself
candy.
Some candy. That's what I'm gonna go do.
Yeah. Saves. I'm gonna hand out Valentine's to my office though. We'll see how that goes.
There you go. Let's see. That being said, Melissa, it is your turn.
It's pitch time
to pitch what we are gonna potentially be doing for this next episode. What have you got for me?
I decided it was about time we class up this joint, Kyle.
Hmm.
I have three
What are you
movies.
trying to say, huh?
I have three movies that are all Best Picture winners at the
Okay.
Oscars. And I also made them romance ones too.
Ah, okay.
Can't
More
stop, won't
romance
stop.
stuff. So we're
Okay.
not ending our romance spree. Here we go.
Yeah, this will probably be my
There we
last
go.
one in the set, I guess, for the month of February.
There you go.
So, pitch number one is last year's Best Picture winner, The Shape of Water, directed by
Shape
Guillermo
of
del
water.
Toro. And it's
Yeah.
funny that earlier you were talking about a woman falling in love with a monster, because this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's set in
And maybe a little
1962.
more.
Yeah. It's set in 1962, and there's a woman who is part of the cleaning staff at this weird government test facility, and she falls in love with basically the creature from the Black Lagoon, who is being
Abe
kept in
Sapien.
like a science tank. Yeah, basically another Abe Sapien.
There you go. Sounds good. I have yet
Mhm.
to see this film.
I've seen it
I've heard
once.
fantastic things.
It's pretty neat.
Sounds good.
Pitch number two is the 2012 Best Picture winner. This is a movie that was very popular the year it came out, but I feel like I haven't heard anybody talking about it since then.
I can't think
This
of
is
any
The
movies that came out.
Artist. This was directed by Michel Hazanavicius, I think. This is a French movie. It is a silent black
That's
and
what I was
white
thinking.
movie.
Okay, I was like, is this the
Yeah,
silent one?
yes. It's set in like 1920s Hollywood, and I think it is about because I've never seen this one. Hold on,
Okay.
let me pull up my IMDb, give you like a legit summary.
The IMDb.
An egomaniacal film star develops a relationship with a young dancer against the backdrop of Hollywood's silent era. I know it has a dog in it, and I
Dogs are
know
great.
it is a really exciting execution of bringing back that old film style, which was used
Interesting.
back then for practical reasons, because, like, well, we don't have sound, we don't have color yet. But in a world where we could do anything, this guy was like, let's take it back. Let's do it all in black and white without any sound.
Sounds
Well, I
good.
mean, I guess without any dialogue. There's probably music in it. I really don't know.
Okay, that
And,
was pitch number 2. So what do you
and
got for pitch number 3?
pitch number three is a very big Oscar winner. This is this ties for two other movies with the record of having the most Oscar wins at 11, and it's something people definitely still talk about today. This is Titanic from
There we go.
1997, directed by James Cameron. We all know the story. You get on the boat, you're king of the world, you sleep together in that
There's still
car.
room on the door, you know.
We all know how it goes. This is a movie I remember my family renting, in 97, 98 when it was a huge
We
deal.
had it. It was the 2 VHSs.
Yeah.
It was one of
Yeah.
those thick ones. That's what she said.
I need me and that just like two VHS tapes. We rented this and we started watching it, and I'm a little kid, and we get through like the first, I don't know, hour and a half of it, and then the flooding starts to happen. And I was too freaked out by it, and we turned it off, and I've never seen the end of this movie. So it's been
Well,
on my own personal redemption list to
confession,
finally.
you've seen more than I have. I haven't even seen any of it.
I've been wanting to like sit down and beginning to end really watch this giant cultural milestone for years. And maybe this week will be the week I actually do it.
There you go. Okay, so pitch number 1 was The Shape of Water.
Mhm.
Pitch number 2 was The Artist.
Mhm.
And pitch number 3 was Titanic.
Yes.
Oh man. So I'm honestly least inclined to pick Titanic in my mind. Because I like Guillermo del Toro.
Mhm.
Because the creature does look a lot like Abe Sapien. It just wants it's like make more Hellboy movies.
I liked
And
the
what
movie a lot, but I also left it feeling like, oh, I miss Hellboy.
Yeah, so I'm kind of inclined to pick that one because of his connection to Hellboy,
Mhm.
but I think it's, I mean, I guess you could say pushing daisies a little on the artsy-fartsy side, but we haven't done like a good artsy-fartsy film.
You want to really class this up then?
Yeah, I think I kind of want to go with that one because it's the most like just not out of my comfort zone, but just like the most out there of the three. I think in terms of what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure monster fucking is, pretty out there, but just in terms of like art style, I feel like this is the one that took the most risks.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do The Artist.
Okay, cool. We're gonna watch The Artist this week. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited. I don't really know anything about it. I didn't know it was set in the 1920s. I knew it was silent, and that was it.
Yeah, and I know there's a dog in it.
Well, there you go. Even more reasons to pick this and watch it.
I remember the dog was like a bigger star than anybody else in the movie. See, this is what I want to do with this podcast is like, I heard a lot about that thing once a couple years ago, and now nobody's talking about it. Can we talk about it?
Yeah, that's what this is for. That's what this is for. I'm already formulating what I'm going to do for the week after that. I think I have a theme.
Yeah.
I have 2 of them down. I need to pick one more. So it's not going to be romance. That's for sure. So there you go. Next week, we are going to be talking about The Artist.
Mm-hmm.
As we said, new episodes of this show come out every Wednesday. If you want to get them early, patreon.com/the Whatnauts for only $1. You can throw some pocket change our way. It'll help us out a ton.
Mm-hmm.
We had some mic issues today. Maybe throwing money at it will help.
Hopefully it can't hurt.
No, all of the money that we get from you guys supporting us goes back into the show, helps pay for domain names and storage space and all of that stuff. It helps us make bigger, better content for you all. And we would love to have your support. But if you got no bucks to toss our way, that's a-okay. Just help us out by retweeting the show, telling a friend, like, share, subscribe, sell your soul, hit the bell, whatever you have to do. Tell a homeless person. I don't know. I don't care. Just help spread the word.
If you have any dollars, give them your dollars.
I mean, yes and no. But yeah, if you want to tell a friend about the show or give us a review on iTunes, that would be helpful. We're also on Spotify. I don't know if Spotify does reviews on there, but all of those things would help. And it actually does help. I know a lot of podcasts say, oh yeah, go give us a review. And you're like, yeah, right. I'm not going to spend a minute doing a review.
It doesn't have to be long. You just give us an amount of stars, preferably 5, and a selection of positive adjectives.
Yeah. If you guys have positive reviews to send our way, that would help us a lot, because those algorithms do actually bump us up based on good reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. That being said, Melissa, where can they find you on the interwebs? What's going on there?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT.
There you go. You can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on both Twitter and Instagram. And if you guys want updates with this show or any of our other podcasts, you can follow us at The Whatnauts on Twitter. We mentioned our Patreon, we mentioned our Twitch, all that stuff, our website for more information, thewhatnauts.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Next week, The Artist. We will be back here for episode 45. We will see you then. Adios, guys.
Bye.
Bye.